The distress signal cut through the void of space like a knife. It reached Earth's monitoring station on the edge of the Kuiper Belt at exactly 3 in the morning. Station time. The young technician on duty nearly spilled his coffee when the computers started screaming alerts. He had never seen anything like it. The signal was old, using frequencies that Earth had abandoned decades ago. But the message was clear. Someone out there was dying. Admiral Jiwan stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the tactical display. The massive warship hummed with quiet power around her. She had been pulled from her quarters an hour ago, and now she stared at the translation that Dr. Soman had prepared. The words made her chest tight. The message came from a species called the Valik. They were herbivores, peaceful traders who had never built a single weapon of war. For 6,000 years they had lived in harmony, traveling between stars and sharing knowledge with anyone who would listen. Now they were being hunted. A species called the Morvan had arrived in their system 3 weeks ago. The Morvan were predators, and they had one simple philosophy. The weak deserved to die. Dr. Soman stood next to the Admiral, her tablet glowing in the dim bridge lighting. She was the best linguist Earth had, and she had spent the last hour breaking down every word of the Valik message. Her hands shook slightly as she spoke. The Valik were begging for help. They had sent the signal to every corner of the galaxy, hoping that someone, anyone, would come. They had no weapons, no defenses, no hope. Commander Heejin pulled up satellite images on the main screen. The pictures came from an old probe that had drifted through Valik space years ago. She enhanced the images and the bridge crew went silent. 3 Valik worlds were burning. Orbital stations hung in space like broken toys. The Morvan ships circled the planets like sharks, patient and cruel. They were not just killing the Valik, they were making it slow. Admiral Jiwan turned to face her crew. Every man and woman on the bridge was watching her, waiting for orders. She knew what Earth's politicians would say. Stay out of it. This was not humanity's fight. The Valik were strangers, aliens who lived thousands of light years away. Getting involved meant risk. It meant war with an unknown enemy. It meant human lives lost for people they had never met. But Jiwan had not become an admiral by playing it safe. She thought about Earth's history. Humanity had spent millions of years climbing to the top of the food chain. Humans were predators too, just like the Morvan. But somewhere along the way, humans had learned something important. Strength without mercy was just cruelty. Power without purpose was just violence. She made her decision. They would go. She called down to the hangar bays and ordered all ships to prepare for immediate deployment. Captain Minho received his orders aboard the destroyer Thunderstrike. He was one of the best combat commanders in the fleet, known for getting close and hitting hard. He smiled when he heard they were going to fight. His crew started running battle drills within minutes. Lieutenant Deho was in the pilot ready room when the alarm sounded. He grabbed his flight helmet and sprinted for his fighter. The Raptor 7 was the newest design Earth had, fast and deadly. Deho had logged more combat hours than anyone else in his squadron. He was cocky, sure, but he could back it up. He strapped into his cockpit and ran through his pre-flight checks. His fighter purred to life around him. Back on the bridge, Commander Hijin was analyzing everything they knew about the Morvan. It was not much. They were predators who hunted in packs. They believed that only the strong deserved to survive. They had conquered 40 star systems using fear and overwhelming force. No one had ever stopped them because no one had ever been strong enough. Hijin looked up at Admiral Jiwan and spoke quietly. The Morvan had no idea what real predators looked like. Dr. Soman intercepted more Valik transmissions. They were getting weaker now. The Morvan were landing troops on the surface of the Valik homeworld. The broadcast showed scenes of terror. Valik civilians running through streets while Morvan soldiers hunted them for sport. Children being separated from their parents. Cities burning. Soman felt sick. She turned to Jiwan and asked how anyone could do this. The Admiral's voice was cold when she answered. Because no one had ever made them stop. The fleet assembled quickly. 12 warships from massive dreadnoughts to fast destroyers. 300 fighters. 20,000 crew members. Earth's politicians were still arguing about whether this was legal when Admiral Jiwan gave the order to jump. The ship's drives spun up, bending space around them. For a moment, the fleet hung in the darkness. Then they were gone, racing through folded space toward a species they had never met. The jump would take 6 days. Admiral Jiwan used that time to prepare. She called meetings with every department head. They ran simulations of every possible battle scenario. Captain Minho drilled his crews until they could reload weapons in their sleep. Lieutenant Deho flew practice runs until his hands moved on instinct. Commander Hijin built detailed models of Morvan tactics based on the intelligence they had. Dr. Soman kept translating Valak messages. Each one was more desperate than the last. The Valik could not understand why this was happening to them. They had done nothing wrong. They had welcomed the Morvan with open arms, offered them trade and friendship. The Morvan had responded with violence. To the Valak, it made no sense. To humans, it made perfect sense. Bullies existed everywhere, even in space. On the 5th day, Admiral Jiwan recorded a message. She knew it might be the last thing she ever said to Earth. She sat in her quarters alone with the weight of her decision. She told the recording that humans had evolved as hunters, persistence predators who chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Social predators who worked in teams to bring down animals 10 times their size. Clever predators who made tools and weapons and changed the world around them. But she also said that humans had evolved beyond simple hunting. They had built laws. They had created art. They had chosen to protect the weak instead of consuming them. That choice, she said, was what made humanity different. Not stronger, not smarter, just different. And if humanity would not use its strength to stop monsters like the Morvan, then what was the point of having that strength at all? The fleet dropped out of jump space at the edge of the Valak system on the 6th day. Sensors immediately lit up with contacts. 47 Morvan warships were spread across the system. They were massive, crude things built for intimidation. Their weapons were designed to cause maximum suffering. They orbited the Valak worlds like vultures, taking their time with the killing. Admiral Jiwan studied the tactical display. She could see the Morvan formation. They were arrogant, spread out, and vulnerable. They had never faced a real threat before. She turned to Commander Hijin and asked for recommendations. Hijin's answer was simple. Hit them fast. Hit them hard. Show them what happens when predators meet apex predators. The Admiral nodded. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. Her voice was calm when she spoke. She told her crews that they were about to face an enemy who believed strength gave them the right to destroy anyone weaker. She said the Morvan were wrong. Strength gave them responsibility, the responsibility to protect those who could not protect themselves. She ended with simple words. Weapons free. Show them what humanity is. The human fleet accelerated toward the Morvan positions. Captain Minho's destroyer group broke formation and angled toward the nearest cluster of enemy ships. Lieutenant Deho launched from the Indomitable's hangar, leading 200 fighters into the black. The Morvan detected the humans and began transmitting threats. They promised death. They promised pain. They had no idea they were already dead. The first Morvan ship died before it even knew the fight had started. Captain Minho's destroyer Thunderstrike fired a full spread of railgun rounds from 8,000 kilometers away. The projectiles moved at a fraction of the speed of light. The Morvan cruiser's shields flickered once, then collapsed like wet paper. Metal tore. Atmosphere vented. The ship broke in half and went dark. The Morvan fleet reacted slowly. They had been hunting defenseless prey for so long that they had forgotten what danger felt like. Their ships began turning, weapons charging. They broadcast challenges in their harsh language. Dr. Soman translated the messages for Admiral Jiwan. The Morvan were calling humans cowards. They were demanding close combat. They wanted to board the human ships and fight face to face. Admiral Jiwan almost smiled. The Morvan thought humans were afraid. They had no idea. She ordered the fleet to split into 3 battle groups. Captain Minho would take the destroyers and hit the Morvan right flank. Commander Hijin would coordinate the dreadnoughts to hammer their center. Lieutenant Deho's fighters would sweep through and destroy anything trying to escape. It was a simple plan, brutal, efficient. Lieutenant Deho punched his fighter through a storm of Morvan weapons fire. His shields absorbed the impacts easily. The Morvan used energy weapons, bright and flashy, but weak. Human shields were designed to stop asteroid strikes. These alien guns barely made them flicker. Deho locked onto a Morvan frigate and fired his missiles. 4 hits. The frigate exploded in a ball of flame that lit up the darkness. The Morvan tried to regroup. They flew in pack formations. 6 or 7 ships clustered together for mutual support. It was a good tactic against weaker enemies. Against humans, it was suicide. Captain Minho saw a pack of Morvan destroyers trying to flank his position. He ordered his ships to focus fire. 12 human destroyers targeted 7 Morvan vessels. The math was simple. The Morvan pack disappeared in 30 seconds. Commander Hyejin watched the tactical display from the Indomitable's bridge. The battle was going exactly as predicted. The Morvan were aggressive but disorganized. They fought like animals, all instinct and rage. Humans fought like humans, coordinated, calculated. Every shot had a purpose. Every maneuver was planned 3 steps ahead. She watched the numbers drop. 47 Morvan ships, now 42, now 38. A group of Morvan boarding craft tried to attach themselves to the Indomitable's hull. They were fast little ships built to carry troops directly onto enemy vessels. The Morvan inside were warriors bred for close combat. They expected to carve through the human ship and take it from within. They never made it. The Indomitable's point defense systems activated. Hundreds of small guns tracked the boarding craft and opened fire. The craft were vaporized before they got within 50 meters. Dr. Soman listened to the Morvan communications. She could hear the panic in their voices now. They were calling for help, demanding reinforcements. They described the human ships as impossibly fast and deadly. They said human weapons cut through shields like they were not even there. One Morvan captain screamed that he was fighting demons, not prey. Soman felt no sympathy. These were the same creatures who had been hunting Valak children for sport. Admiral Jiwan received a transmission from the Valak homeworld. The signal was weak and broken. The Valak were watching the battle from their dying cities. They could not believe what they were seeing. For weeks, the Morvan had seemed unstoppable. Now they were running. Now they were dying. The Valak asked a question that Soman had to translate 3 times because she could not believe it. They asked if humans were gods. Jiwan answered personally. She told the Valak that humans were not gods. Humans were predators who had learned to be something more. She said that every species had a choice. They could use their strength to dominate, or they could use it to protect. Humanity had made its choice a long time ago. The Valak went silent for a moment. Then they started crying. Not from fear, from relief. Captain Minho pursued a group of fleeing Morvan cruisers toward the outer system. They were running for a jump point, trying to escape. He ordered his destroyers to accelerate to maximum speed. The human ships were faster. They caught up to the Morvan within 20 minutes. Minho gave them one chance to surrender. The Morvan answered with weapons fire. He shrugged and gave the order. His ships fired. The Morvan cruisers became expanding clouds of debris. Lieutenant Deho led his fighter squadron through the wreckage of the Morvan fleet. His computer counted destroyed ships automatically. 31 confirmed kills. 16 more damaged and drifting. Only a handful were still fighting, and they would not last long. The human dreadnoughts were methodically hunting down survivors. It was not cruel. It was necessary. Every Morvan ship they destroyed was one less ship that could hurt innocent people. One Morvan commander tried something different. He broadcast a surrender signal. His ship powered down its weapons and shields. Commander Hyejin reported it to Admiral Jiwan immediately. This was the first Morvan to give up. Jiwan had to decide quickly. Did she accept the surrender or destroy the ship? She thought about it for 5 seconds. Then she ordered the Morvan ship taken into custody. If they wanted mercy, she would show them what mercy looked like. The battle lasted 2 hours and 17 minutes. When it was over, 31 Morvan ships were destroyed. 9 were captured. 7 managed to reach the jump point and escape. Admiral Jiwan let them go. She wanted survivors. She wanted them to go back to their leaders and tell them what had happened here. She wanted the Morvan to understand that humanity was now watching. Human losses were minimal. 3 fighters were damaged but recovered. 1 destroyer had taken heavy fire and needed repairs. 15 crew members were injured. None were killed. Commander Hyejin ran the numbers 3 times to make sure they were correct. They had just destroyed a fleet that had conquered 40 star systems, and they had lost nothing. She looked at Admiral Jiwan with something like awe. Captain Minho brought his ships back to formation. His crew was celebrating, cheering, and shaking hands. He let them have their moment. They had earned it. But he also knew this was just the beginning. The Morvan were a huge empire. This had been one small fleet. There would be more battles. Harder battles. He looked at the tactical display and started planning for the next fight. Lieutenant Deho landed his fighter in the Indomitable's hangar bay. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. He had shot down 6 Morvan ships personally. His fighter had taken dozens of hits and kept flying. He climbed out of the cockpit and kissed the hull. The ground crew laughed at him. He did not care. He was alive. The Valak were alive. That was all that mattered. Dr. Soman sent a message to the Valak homeworld. She told them the immediate threat was gone. Human ships would remain in the system to protect them while they recovered. She asked if the Valak needed medical supplies, food, or shelter. The Valak response came back in seconds. They needed everything. The Morvan had destroyed so much. Soman began coordinating relief efforts immediately. Fighting was one thing. Rebuilding was another. Admiral Jiwan walked through the Indomitable's corridors. Crew members stopped to salute her as she passed. She acknowledged each one. These people had followed her into an unknown situation against an unknown enemy. They had trusted her judgment. They had done their jobs perfectly. She was proud of them. But she also knew the real test was just beginning. Commander Hyejin was interrogating the captured Morvan commanders. They sat in holding cells, shocked and confused. They kept asking how they had lost. Their ships were bigger. They had more weapons. They were predators, bred for war. Hyejin explained it simply. Size did not matter. Numbers did not matter. What mattered was how you used what you had. The Morvan fought like animals. Humans fought like soldiers. There was a difference. One Morvan prisoner asked Hyejin what humans would do with them. Would they be tortured? Experimented on? Eaten? Hyejin stared at the alien for a long moment. Then she laughed. She told him that humans would give them food, medical care, and fair treatment. The Morvan did not understand. That was exactly the point. Maybe if they were treated with dignity, they would learn that strength did not have to mean cruelty. The Valak sent a delegation to meet with Admiral Jiwan. They arrived on a small shuttle, nervous and afraid. They did not know what to expect from their saviors. When they stepped onto the Indomitable's hangar deck, they saw human crew members working calmly. No weapons pointed at them. No threats, just people doing their jobs. The leader of the Valak delegation was an elderly being named Thivan. He approached Admiral Jiwan with trembling hands and thanked her for saving his people. Admiral Jiwan shook Thivan's hand gently. She told him that humanity had simply done what was right. The Valak had called for help and humanity had answered. It was that simple. Thivan asked why. Why would humans risk their lives for strangers? Jiwan thought about that question. She finally answered that every intelligent species had a responsibility to protect life. Not just their own species, all life. That was what separated civilization from barbarism. Commander Hyejin stood on the surface of the Valak homeworld. The city around her was damaged but still standing. Buildings had scorch marks from Morvan weapons. Streets were empty and quiet. She could see Valak civilians watching from windows, too afraid to come outside. They had been hunted for weeks. Trust would take time. Elder Thivan walked beside her, pointing out the worst damage. He explained that the Morvan had targeted schools first, then hospitals, then homes. They wanted to break the Valak spirit before killing them. Hyejin felt anger rise in her chest. She pushed it down. Anger was not useful right now. Helping was useful. She called up to the Indomitable and requested medical teams and supplies. The Valak were nothing like humans. They were tall and thin, with large eyes that seemed to see everything. Their hands had 6 fingers, delicate and precise. They moved carefully, always aware of their surroundings. Hyejin realized this was the behavior of prey animals, always watching for danger, always ready to run. It made sense. The Valak had evolved on a peaceful world. They had never needed to fight. Dr. Soman joined Hyejin on the planet. She brought translation equipment and began speaking with Valak scholars. They wanted to understand humans. They asked questions about Earth, about human history, about why humans had come to help. Soman answered honestly. She told them about human wars, about the violence that had nearly destroyed Earth, about how humans had finally learned to work together. The Valak were horrified. They could not imagine a species fighting itself. One of the scholars asked if humans were dangerous. Soman thought carefully before answering. She said yes, humans were dangerous, very dangerous, but they had learned to control that danger. They had channeled it into protection instead of destruction. The Valak did not seem reassured. They looked at the human soldiers working nearby with visible fear. Elder Thivan asked Commander Hyejin a direct question. He wanted to know what humans were. Were they predators like the Morvan? Hyejin sat down on a piece of rubble and gestured for Thivan to join her. She explained that yes, humans were predators. They had evolved from hunters who chased prey for days until it collapsed. They had forward-facing eyes for tracking. They had hands for making weapons. They had brains for planning ambushes. But she also explained that humans were social predators. They hunted in groups. They cared for their wounded. They raised their children together. Somewhere in their evolution, humans had discovered that cooperation was more powerful than individual strength. They had learned that protecting the group was more important than personal glory. That lesson had changed everything. Thevan listened carefully. He asked if that meant humans would eventually turn on the Valak. After all, predators needed prey. Hijin shook her head firmly. She said that humans had stopped being pure predators millions of years ago. They had become something new, something that chose what it wanted to be. The Valak found this concept strange. In their experience, nature determined behavior. Choice did not enter into it. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Jiwan was dealing with a different problem. Earth's government was angry. She had deployed military forces without approval. She had started a war with an alien species. Politicians were demanding her return for a hearing. Some were calling for her arrest. She read the messages and deleted them. She had more important things to worry about. Captain Minho brought her new intelligence. The Morvan ships that had escaped were calling for reinforcements. They were broadcasting what had happened, warning their leaders about humanity. The Morvan High Command was not taking the defeat well. They saw it as an insult. More ships were coming, many more. Minho estimated they had maybe 2 weeks before a much larger Morvan fleet arrived. Admiral Jiwan called a strategy meeting. Her senior officers gathered in the conference room. Captain Minho, Commander Hyejin, who had returned from the surface, Lieutenant Daiho, and Dr. Soman. She laid out the situation simply. A larger Morvan fleet was coming. The human fleet was outnumbered. They could retreat to Earth and let the Valak face the consequences alone. Or they could stay and fight. Lieutenant Daiho spoke first. He said leaving was not an option. They had made a promise to the Valak. Human promises meant something. If they ran now, it would prove the Morvan were right. That strength was the only thing that mattered. Captain Minho agreed. He said his crews were ready to fight. They had beaten the Morvan once. They could do it again. Dr. Soman raised a concern. The Valak were part of something called the Harmony Collective. It was a loose alliance of 17 peaceful species. All of them were herbivores or omnivores. None had militaries. If the Morvan defeated humanity here, those 17 species would be next. The Morvan would hunt them down one by one. This was not just about the Valak anymore. This was about the future of peaceful species everywhere. Commander Hyejin pointed out a strategic advantage. If humanity defended the Valak successfully, they would earn the trust of 17 civilizations. Those species had resources, technology, and knowledge that Earth could benefit from. More importantly, they would be allies. Earth would not be alone in the galaxy anymore. It was a long-term investment. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Admiral Jiwan listened to all of them. Then she made her decision. They would stay. They would fight. And they would win. She sent a message to Earth requesting reinforcements. She knew they might not arrive in time. She also sent messages to the Harmony Collective, introducing humanity and explaining the situation. If this was going to be a fight for the future of peaceful species, she wanted them all to know about it. The Harmony Collective responded faster than expected. Representatives from 6 species arrived within 3 days. They came in civilian ships, unarmed and vulnerable. They wanted to meet the humans who had fought the Morvan. Elder Thivan hosted a gathering in the largest undamaged building on the Valak homeworld. It was supposed to be a diplomatic meeting. It turned into something else. The alien representatives were all herbivores or peaceful omnivores. They had names that Dr. Soman struggled to pronounce. They came from worlds without major predators. They had built civilizations on trade, art, and science. The concept of war was theoretical to them. They had heard stories of the Morvan, distant rumors of a species that killed for pleasure. Now those rumors were at their doorstep. Admiral Jiwan attended the meeting with her senior staff. The alien representative stared at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and fear. One species, the Kethril, asked directly if humans were predators. Jiwan did not lie. She said yes. Humans were apex predators from a death world where everything wanted to kill you. The aliens shifted nervously. Jiwan continued. She said humans were also protectors. They had learned that strength without compassion was meaningless. A representative from the Solith species asked why humans had come. What did they gain from helping the Valak? Captain Minho answered that one. He said humans gained the knowledge that they had done the right thing, that they had used their strength to save lives instead of taking them. The Solith representative looked confused. The concept of acting without immediate benefit seemed foreign. Dr. Soman explained human philosophy. She said that humans believed all intelligent life had value, that diversity made the universe better, that protecting the weak was not weakness, it was the ultimate expression of strength. The alien representatives listened carefully. Some seemed to understand. Others still looked afraid. Soman could not blame them. Meeting your first predator species had to be terrifying. Elder Thyvan stood up and addressed both the aliens and the humans. He said that the Valak had been saved by beings they had feared, that humans had proven themselves to be protectors, not destroyers. He asked the other Harmony Collective species to support humanity in the coming battle, to provide whatever resources they could, because if humanity fell, they would all fall next. The meeting ended with tentative agreements. The Harmony Collective would provide supplies, repair facilities, and intelligence. They could not provide weapons because they had none, but they would help in other ways. Commander Heejin coordinated with their engineers. Lieutenant Deho started training some of their pilots in basic evasive maneuvers. Every little bit helped. Captain Minho worked on fortifying the system's defenses. He deployed weapon satellites and sensor nets. He identified choke points where enemy ships would have to pass. He set up kill zones where human ships could maximize their firepower. The Valak system was becoming a fortress. It would not be enough against a massive fleet, but it would slow them down. Admiral Jiwan spent her evenings walking through the Indomitable's corridors. She talked to crew members, listened to their concerns, answered their questions. They were scared. They were far from home, about to face an enemy that outnumbered them. But they were also determined. They believed in what they were doing. That belief would keep them fighting when things got bad. On the 8th day, sensors detected ships approaching from deep space. Admiral Jiwan was on the bridge immediately. Commander Heejin pulled up the data. It was not the Morven. It was a human fleet. Earth had sent reinforcements. 30 warships led by Vice Admiral Taewan. They had come to help. Jiwan felt relief flood through her. They had a chance now. A real chance. Vice Admiral Taewan was an old friend of Jiwan's. The Morven Alpha fleet arrived exactly 2 weeks after the first battle. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valak system in a formation that was meant to intimidate. 143 warships arranged in perfect hunting packs. At the center was the Apex Fang, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed anything the humans had brought. It was a statement of power, a promise of destruction. Admiral Jiwan watched the sensor display as the Morvan fleet appeared. Commander Hyejin called out the numbers. Her voice was steady, but Jiwan could hear the tension underneath. 143 enemy ships against 42 human vessels. The math was not good, but wars were not won by math alone. They were won by strategy, courage, and the will to never give up. The Morvan broadcast a message. Dr. Soman translated it in real time. The leader of the Alpha fleet was a creature called War Leader Kravath. He spoke in a voice that was meant to terrify. He said that humanity had made a grave mistake by interfering. The Morvan were apex predators, masters of war. Humans were nothing but prey who had learned to fight back. He gave them one chance to run. Leave the system now or die with the Valak. Admiral Jiwan recorded her response carefully. She made sure her voice was calm and clear. She told War Leader Kravath that humanity had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had fought each other, fought nature, fought extinction itself. They had learned that bullies only understood one language. She ended with simple words. Humanity was not leaving. If the Morven wanted the Valak, they would have to go through every human ship first. The Morven fleet began its advance. They moved in their traditional formation, packs of ships working together. It was an effective tactic. They had used it to conquer dozens of systems. Captain Minho watched their approach and smiled. The Morven were predictable. That was their weakness. They had one way of fighting and they never changed it. Humans had dozens of ways to fight. And they adapted constantly. Admiral Jiwan's battle plan was complex. It had 3 phases: each designed to exploit Morvan weaknesses. Phase 1 was the bait. Captain Minho would take his destroyer group and harass the Morvan flanks, make them think the humans were retreating, draw part of their fleet away from the main formation. It was dangerous. Minho's ships would be exposed and vulnerable, but he volunteered without hesitation. Captain Minho's destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the Morvan right flank. They fired a volley of missiles and then turned away as if retreating. The Morvan took the bait immediately. 40 ships broke off from the main fleet to pursue. They were eager for an easy kill. They thought the human ships were running scared. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. Phase 2 began when the pursuing Morvan ships crossed an invisible line in space. Lieutenant Deho had been waiting with 300 fighters, hidden behind an asteroid field. His fighters activated their weapons and swarmed the Morvan ships from every direction. The Morvan were caught completely by surprise. Their shields were facing forward, ready for a chase. Their rear and flanks were exposed. Lieutenant Deho led his squadron in a precision strike on a Morvan cruiser. His fighters moved in perfect coordination, each one targeting a specific weak point. Engines, weapons, shield generators. The cruiser tried to defend itself, but it was designed to hunt prey, not fight off swarms of small craft. Within minutes, it was dead in space. Deho moved to the next target. Captain Minho's destroyers turned back and rejoined the fight. Now the Morvan ships were caught between Minho's heavy weapons and Deho's fighters. They tried to regroup, but human coordination was too fast. Every time the Morvan formed a defensive position, the humans adapted and attacked from a different angle. Within an hour, 35 of the 40 pursuing ships were destroyed. The remaining 5 retreated back to their main fleet. War leader Kravath was furious. Commander Hijin intercepted his communications. He was screaming at his subordinates, calling them weak and incompetent. He blamed them for falling into such an obvious trap. But Hijin noticed something interesting. Kravath did not change his tactics. He did not adapt. He just ordered the rest of his fleet to attack more aggressively. The Morvan believed that overwhelming force solved all problems. Phase 3 was the most dangerous part of the plan. The entire Morvan fleet, now down to 108 ships, charged toward the human position. They expected a defensive fight. They expected the humans to try to hold their ground. Instead, the human fleet scattered. Ships broke formation and fled in different directions. To the Morvan, it looked like panic. It was not. It was calculated. The Morvan fleet spread out to chase the fleeing human ships. They divided their forces, each pack pursuing what they thought was easy prey. They did not notice the mines that Captain Minho had deployed days earlier. They did not see the weapon satellites that Commander Hyojin had hidden throughout the system. They were so focused on the hunt that they forgot to watch for ambush. Admiral Jiwan waited until the Morvan fleet was completely spread out. Then she gave the signal. The mines activated. The weapon satellites opened fire. Explosions rippled through the Morvan formations. Ships that had been chasing human vessels suddenly found themselves under attack from every direction. The hunters had become the hunted, and they did not know how to deal with it. The human ships stopped retreating and turned back. Now they were the ones doing the hunting. Captain Minho's destroyers tore through disorganized Morvan packs. Lieutenant Deho's fighters swarmed isolated ships. Vice Admiral Taewon's dreadnoughts picked off the larger vessels with precise, devastating fire. The Morvan tried to regroup, but they could not coordinate. Their command structure was breaking down. War leader Kravath realized he was losing. He broadcast orders for his fleet to converge on his flagship. The Morvan ships began pulling back, trying to form a defensive position around the apex fang. It was the right tactical decision. But it was also exactly what Admiral Jiwan wanted. She ordered all human ships to focus on the Morvan center. If they could destroy the flagship, the entire enemy fleet would collapse. The apex fang was a monster of a ship. It had shields that could absorb incredible amounts of damage. It had weapons that could destroy smaller vessels with a single shot. It was the pride of the Morvan fleet, built to be indestructible. But nothing was truly indestructible. Commander Hijin analyzed its design and found the weak points. Every ship had them, even this one. Admiral Jiwan personally took control of the Indomitable's weapons. She targeted the Apex Fang's shield generators. 3 dreadnoughts joined her, adding their firepower. The combined assault was incredible. Energy beams and railgun rounds hammered the Morvan flagship from multiple angles. The shields flickered but held. Cravath broadcast a challenge, daring the humans to face him in single combat. Jiwan ignored him. She was not interested in honor. She was interested in winning. Captain Minho saw his opportunity. While the dreadnoughts kept the Apex Fang's shields under pressure, he ordered his destroyers to flank the massive ship. They moved fast, darting between other Morvan vessels. The enemy tried to intercept, but Minho's crews were too skilled. They reached optimal firing position and unleashed everything they had. Torpedoes, missiles, railgun rounds, all aimed at the same point on the flagship's hull. The Apex Fang's shields collapsed under the sustained assault. Armor plating cracked and tore. Internal explosions rippled through the ship. War leader Cravath broadcast one final message. He screamed that the Morvan would never stop. That more fleets would come, that humanity would drown in Morvan blood. Then his communication cut off as Captain Minho's final torpedo hit the flagship's reactor. The Apex Fang exploded in a fireball that lit up the entire system. The effect on the Morvan fleet was immediate and dramatic. Ships stopped fighting. Some tried to flee. Others broadcast surrender signals. A few kept fighting, but they were quickly overwhelmed. Commander Hyejin watched the tactical display as the enemy formations fell apart. She had studied Morvan culture extensively. She knew that their entire society was based on alpha dominance. Without their leader, they were lost. Admiral Jiwan ordered ceasefire for any ship that surrendered. She broadcast a message across all frequencies. Any Morvan vessel that powered down its weapons would be allowed to leave the system alive. They would be escorted to the edge of Valak space and released, but they would carry a message back to their leaders. The Harmony Collective was now under human protection. Any future attacks would be met with overwhelming force. 62 Morvan ships surrendered. 23 tried to flee and were destroyed. 18 managed to escape through jump points before they could be stopped. The rest were already dead, floating hulks drifting through space. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was higher this time. 4 destroyers were gone, 9 fighters lost, 367 human crew members dead. It was a victory, but not a cheap one. Lieutenant Deho landed his fighter in the Indomitable's hangar bay. His cockpit was scorched from near misses. His left engine was barely functioning. He had lost 6 pilots from his squadron. Good people, friends. He climbed out of his fighter and sat on the deck, too tired to stand. The war was not over. More Morvan would come. But right now, in this moment, they had won. The memorial service was held on the Valak homeworld. 367 names were read aloud in the rebuilt central square. Valak civilians stood alongside human sailors. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound was the wind and the quiet voices reading the names of the dead. When it was over, Elder Thyvan planted a tree for each fallen human. He said the Valak would tend these trees for 1,000 years. They would never forget. Admiral Jiwan stood at attention through the entire ceremony. Her dress uniform was perfect. Her face showed nothing, but Commander Hyejin knew her well enough to see the pain underneath. Jiwan blamed herself for every death. Hyejin had tried to tell her that was foolish. They had all volunteered. They had all known the risks, but Jiwan would not listen. She carried the weight of command like a physical burden. After the service, representatives from all 17 Harmony Collective species arrived. They came to thank humanity. They brought gifts, offers of alliance, promises of friendship. But they also brought warnings. The Morvan Empire was massive. War leader Cravath had been just one regional commander. The Alpha Fleet had been just one battle group. The true Morvan leadership was only now learning what had happened. And they were not happy. A Morvan prisoner named Throvax requested a meeting with Admiral Jiwan. He was a High Claw, which translated roughly to Admiral in human terms. He had been captured during the battle and had spent weeks in human custody. He said he had information that might save lives. Jiwan agreed to meet him, though Captain Minho insisted on being present with armed guards. Throvax was massive, easily twice the size of a human. He had scales instead of skin and teeth designed for tearing meat, but his eyes were intelligent. He sat across from Admiral Jiwan and spoke in broken human language that Dr. Soman had taught him. He said that watching humans fight had changed his understanding of war. The Morvan believed that individual strength determined everything, but humans fought as a unified force. That was something Throvax had never seen before. Throvax explained that the Morvan Supreme Pack Leader, Overlord Varkas, was gathering the Grand Fleet. 800 warships. The largest military force the Morven had ever assembled. They were coming to crush humanity and make an example that would terrify the galaxy. Varkas saw the human victory as a personal insult. He would not rest until every human ship was destroyed and every human world was burning. Captain Minho wanted to execute Throvax as a spy. But Admiral Jiwan saw something else. She saw an opportunity. She asked Throvax why he was telling them this. Why betray his own species? The Morvan was silent for a long moment. Then he said that he had seen what his people did to the Valak. He had participated in the hunting. He had thought it was right. But watching humans risk their lives to protect strangers had made him question everything. Throvax said that Morvan culture taught that weakness deserved death. But humans proved that protecting the weak required more strength than killing them. He wanted to help humanity because maybe, just maybe, they could teach his people a different way to live. It was a slim hope, but it was the first hope he had felt in his entire life. Admiral Jiwan accepted his help. She gave him limited freedom on the Indomitable and put him to work providing intelligence on Morvan tactics. Earth's government sent orders for the fleet to return home immediately. Politicians argued that humanity had done enough. The Valak were saved. The point was made. Staying to fight the Grand Fleet would be suicide. Better to fortify Earth's defenses and let the Harmony Collective handle their own problems. The orders came with threats. Admiral Jiwan would face court-martial if she disobeyed. She might even face prison. Admiral Jiwan called a meeting of her senior staff. She laid out the situation honestly. Earth wanted them to leave. If they stayed and fought, they would be disobeying direct orders. Their careers would be over. They might face criminal charges. But if they left, the Harmony Collective would fall. 17 species would be hunted to extinction. The choice was simple. Career or conscience, Lieutenant Deho spoke first. He said he did not join the military to follow stupid orders. He joined to protect people who needed protecting. If Earth's politicians could not see that, then the politicians were wrong. He would stay and fight, Captain Minho agreed. He said humanity had made a promise to the Valak. Breaking that promise would make humans no better than the Morvan. Honor meant something. Promises meant something. Dr. Soman pointed out that this was bigger than just the Valak. The entire galaxy was watching. If humanity abandoned its allies now, every other species would know that human friendship meant nothing. Earth would be isolated, alone, and eventually threats like the Morvan would reach Earth's doorstep. Better to fight them here, with allies, than fight them later alone. Commander Heejin said that she had spent weeks working with the Harmony Collective. She had seen their technology, their art, their culture. They were worth saving. More than that, they were worth fighting for. If humanity turned its back on them, it would prove that all of Earth's talk about protecting life was just empty words. She would rather face court-martial than live with that shame. Vice Admiral Taewon had stayed quiet during the discussion. He was the highest-ranking officer after Jiwan. If they stayed, his career was over too. He finally spoke. He said he had been in the military for 30 years. He had fought in border skirmishes and anti-piracy operations. But he had never fought for something that really mattered. Not until now. He would stay. And he would face whatever consequences came. Admiral Jiwan looked at each of them. These people were willing to throw away everything they had worked for, because it was the right thing to do. She felt pride that almost hurt. She made the announcement fleet-wide. Any crew member who wanted to return to Earth could take a shuttle to the civilian transports that were leaving. No questions asked. No judgments made. This had to be voluntary. Out of 20,000 crew members, 83 chose to leave. They were scared. They had families waiting at home. Admiral Jiwan shook each person's hand as they departed. She told them they had done their duty honorably. The remaining 19,917 crew members stayed. They knew what was coming. They stayed anyway. News of Admiral Jiwan's decision reached Earth. The reaction was explosive. Some called her a traitor. Others called her a hero. Protests filled the streets. People argued in public forums. The debate raged for days. Then something unexpected happened. Volunteers started arriving. Civilian ships carrying former military personnel, engineers, doctors, and supplies. They came from Earth, from Mars, from the outer colonies. They came to help. Earth's president, a woman named Bora, gave a speech that changed everything. She admitted that ordering the fleet to withdraw had been wrong. She said that humanity's strength came from its compassion, not from its weapons. She announced that Earth would support Admiral Jiwan fully. The entire Earth defense fleet was being mobilized. 300 warships would jump to Valik space within 2 weeks. Humanity was going to war. The Harmony Collective reacted to the news with shock and gratitude. They had expected humanity to abandon them. Instead, humanity was committing its entire military. Elder Theven told Commander Hyejin that the Valik had a saying, "True friends were revealed in hard times." Humanity had proven to be the truest friend the Valak had ever known. The Harmony Collective species began preparing in their own ways. They could not provide warships, but they provided everything else. Repair facilities, supply depots, medical stations, intelligence networks. The Kethril provided advanced sensors. The Solith provided food synthesizers. Every species contributed what they could. It was not much compared to the military might of the Morvan. But it was something. Lieutenant Deho worked with Harmony Collective pilots. He taught them basic combat flying. They would never be fighter pilots. Their species had not evolved for that kind of aggression, but they could fly reconnaissance missions. They could operate supply shuttles. Every little bit helped. Deho found himself becoming protective of his alien students. They were trying so hard to help, even though they were terrified. Captain Minho coordinated with Harmony Collective engineers to upgrade their civilian ships with basic weapons. They would not be warships, but they could support the human fleet, draw fire, create distractions, force the Morvan to split their attention. Minho knew that many of these civilian vessels would not survive the coming battle, but the aliens volunteered anyway. They wanted to fight for their freedom. Dr. Soman discovered something fascinating while studying Harmony Collective cultures. Every single species had myths about guardian spirits, powerful beings who protected the weak from evil. The myths were all different, but the core idea was the same. The universe needed protectors. Salman realized that humanity was becoming those guardians. They were becoming the myths that other species told their children. Throvax proved invaluable. He provided detailed information on Morvan fleet tactics, ship designs, and command structures. He explained that Overlord Varkas was brutal but predictable. He would try to overwhelm the humans with pure force. He would not expect clever tactics or strategic thinking. That was the Morvan weakness. They saw war as a contest of strength. Humans saw war as a problem to solve.